In this tutorial, we are going to talk about the different file types and content types we can use with the Venlearn Editor. As you can see, Venlearn Editor allows us to add mathematical formulas. It allows us to add tables. It allows us to add images. It allows us to add audio as well as HTML type contents. Now, these contents are very important, especially as we create CBT, because sometimes our content may have images or tables as well as formulas if we are working with math-related contents or subjects. Now, I'm going to show you how to add images, for instance. Now, to add an image, you ensure that your cursor is placed where you want the image to be. To add image, you click on the image, and then you select the image you want to add. It opens an image editor. So Venlearn has an inbuilt mini image editor. What it means is that you don't have to edit your image in an external editor before you bring it into Venlearn. This is very, very useful, especially if you are working on content and you are using images downloaded from the internet. You don't have to work with multiple apps to get your images edited before it's included. So the image editor can do so many things. You can see here there are some presets aspect ratio we have, so you can switch between the different aspect ratio as you desire. You can go back to original. The system also allows us to flip. So if you are working with a non-symmetric image, you can flip it and change the orientation to the other side. It also allows us to rotate the image in the 4 angles we can. Also, we can also sort of create rotation that are in continuous steps. So however we want to rotate it, we may have an image that is not properly aligned or is not straight. We can slightly adjust the rotation and choose the way we desire. If we are satisfied, we can save our image. If we are not, we can reset to the previous state, or we can as well undo. So when we undo, it goes back to the previous settings, or we can simply just reset it. The system also allows us to zoom out using our trackpad or zoom in on an image. So if we are okay with this image, we can adjust it in this way. We can zoom out and then make a bit of adjustment. If the image is just perfect, all we need to do is to save it. Now, after you save an image, automatically it is added to the editor as well as saved in the file system of the project. In order for you to preview the image, you can click on the preview and you see how the image looks like. Now, there are other things you can do to an image. You can as well decide that you can delete the image simply by right-clicking on the image and clicking on the delete button, or as well you can edit it and delete from here, or you can make changes as you desire. Now, we can decide to delete our image. So after deleting our image, the next item we can add is, say we want to add an audio file. To add an audio file is as similar as adding an image. All you need to do is to click on the audio icon. Audio files are essentially MP3 files that plays a recording on our system. To add an audio file, all you need to do is to click on upload. And then we can search the audio file from our file system. So for example, I may want to add this image, this audio is a small audio file, a simple MP3 file, and add it. So the image has been added. Now there are some presets for the audio. We'll leave everything as default and save it for now. So you can see the audio. I can play the audio and you may be able to hear it a bit. It's a very low sound. So you can play, you can pause, you can see the timer as well as adjust the volume. You can adjust the playback speed. So this is more like a full settings for the audio. However, we may not be satisfied with the full settings. There are some questions that are audio based that doesn't allow you to seek, or they don't allow you to stop it. Once it's played, it cannot be repeated, or you cannot make adjustments to the volume or the speed. We can also configure that from our audio settings. For example, we may decide to right-click on an audio, click on Edit. So this is a standard player. There are some presets we can set. There's a micro player, there's a mini player, there's a regular player as well as a standard player. For example, if I choose micro player, it's the simplest form of player. And if I click save, you can see that it doesn't have seek bars, it doesn't have timers, it doesn't have adjustments, just plain old play and pause button. If we are good with this, we can use it for our question. We can as well decide to edit and change other presets. There's also a mini player. Clicking OK for mini player, you can see a mini player contains play, stop, and then the timer for the audio. If we are okay with this, we can continue, or we can decide to also change the presets. Go to regular player. Regular player is almost like standard player with a little bit of difference. Regular player does not include adjusting the volume or playback speed. It just has the play, the pause, the stop, the timer, the sig bar. So we can go back to standard player. Now, if you click on standard player, you have a full-fledged editor that has both volume and playback speed adjustments. Now, if you click on edit, and then there are also other things you can do. If you want to use a standard player, but you don't want it to be seekable, you can choose this. What it means is that once it starts playing, you cannot seek it. You can see the arrow to seek it is no longer there. You cannot seek it forward or backward. So there are some kind of quizzes that doesn't allow you to seek. It plays once, you cannot go back. So you have to listen attentively in order to get what they're trying to talk about. So that's that. You can also make sure that it's not possible. What it means is that the moment you start playing, you cannot pause it, or it's not stoppable. So choosing these two options and playing it, you can see that when we play the video, we cannot pause it. Pause is disabled, stop is disabled. And also we cannot seek, but we can replay. If we don't want a replay, we can choose a maximum play to be 0. So once it's played once, once it's played once, you will not be able to replay it. Or you can choose 2 or 3 replays. So you can only play it 3 times. You can adjust those settings. Apart from that, you can also change the background color of the image. Say you can use the theme color of your organization. Say it's green. You can use somewhere light green. Okay. And then when you click OK, you can see that the music player has changed to a green background color. You can as well choose to edit the music, audio player or music player too. There are some other things you can do. For example, if we decide to go with a micro player, we may be able to adjust the width and the height of the player as we desire. For example, we can say we should use, if you see the current, let's go back. If we choose a micro player, you see the current size of the micro player is a small, but say in our editor, it's too small and we need it to be a bit more visible. We can right click, edit, and then ensure that we change the pixel for the width and height to say 100 and 100. So you can see now the micro player is bigger. We can play and we can pause. We can also edit. There are some other things we can do. We can put the volume to be a particular preset, say 50% of the actual volume. Perhaps we have an audio that is too loud and we don't want to distract the other students. We can reduce the volume by default, giving the students the option to increase the volume. We're also allowed to do an alignment. Left align is default, center align and right align. So these are more or less like most of the settings you can do with our audio player. Now we are good. So let's delete the audio player and talk about other things. The next item we can talk about is the tables. Say we want to add a table to this project. We click on the tables item. Now the table comes with a default 1 row, 2 column table. The table has a header as well as a row, but it's a 2 column system. We can make adjustments. Say we have a 3 column, 3 rows table. All we need to do is to add an extra column and add 2 new extra rows. So we can now fill the item. So this is the title. We can replace the title here and say this is title 1 of the table, title 2 of the table, as well as title 3. Then we can now start populating the table. Say the table just has characters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If we are okay with this table, we can save. You can see the table has rendered in our editor as we have created it. But there are still some things you can still do to a table. You can right-click as well and edit. Now, we are currently in the last row. We can decide to delete this table entirely if we don't want the table, or we can decide that we want to move the last row to be up. So we can move row the same way we can move rows in settings for topics and sections. We can as well delete a row if we're not satisfied with it, or we can delete a column. We can also add. Also, if we don't, some tables do not have title, so we can simply convert the header to a row. So the boldness of the row is gone, and we can simply just change it to be simple. If we're okay, we can save. Automatically, the table is replaced to this. So that is that about table. So we're going to delete the table and go to the next content type. So the next thing we are going to talk about is the formula. Formula is a very, very critical type for our editor. Many times we work with complex expression in subjects like mathematics or science-related subjects, and we may need to write complex formulas. Now, to edit formulas, we click on the formula item here. Now, formula comes in different types. There's an inline and there's a block. What inline means is that if you are writing a text, you can have a formula just come after the text in the same line. However, there are some block level formulas that needs to be shown on different line. So whichever the case may be, the only difference is that inline formulas have smaller font size and block level formulas have larger font size. Now, we use a concept called LaTeX to express our formula. LaTeX is more like a markup language similar to HTML that provides a syntax with which you can use to express complex formulas. If you click here, you can see the documentation of the formula. So you do well to read it. It's very straightforward and easy to understand. So no matter the kind of complex expression you want to do, it is doable using the LaTeX syntax. So this will show you all you need to know to create LaTeX. For example, you can see that if you want to create certain matrices, there's some syntax you need to follow. But let's go to simple expressions before we start going to complex expressions. So if you look at the LaTeX, the LaTeX documentation, some kind of characters, for example, this is a nabla character. In order for you to represent it, you just type nabla, and then this character will be rendered in the preview. So I'm going to show you an example. We are going to write an almighty formula. So to do that, we enter the editor. Now, for almighty formula, we know the almighty formula is x equal to square root of plus or minus, s is equal to plus or minus square root of b square minus 4ac over 2a. So in order to express that, we type x equal to, right? Then in order for us to express a fraction in KaTeX or LaTeX expression, we use the \frac. And then whatever comes after the fraction would be put in fraction. For example, 1, 2, it would be 1 over 2. But we don't want 1 over 2. And besides, there's a way to group it. For example, if you want 12 to be the numerator, you have to group it. So the first bracket will contain the numerator. The second bracket will contain the denominator. So let's first type the denominator. 2a is the denominator for an almighty formula. We'll put that. Then for the numerator, we know that we have minus b plus minus root b. So we first put our minus b. And then to express plus or minus in KaTeX, we use the \pm for plus minus. So you can see in the preview that the plus minus have been rendered accordingly. Then we know that we need a square root. To express square roots in KaTeX, we use \sqrt. And then square root comes with the information in it. So we also group it with the brackets as well. Now, square root follows by minus b. Minus b plus or minus root b square. So to write b square, to write square, we use the caret sign and 2. So you can discover that b caret 2 is b square minus 4ac. So you can see how simply we've been able to express the almighty formula using the KaTeX notation. There are so much more complex formula I'm going to show you in this example that can help you render in KaTeX. So also we can go further. When we press enter in the editor, whatever we type will show directly under the first expression. For example, I can decide to have another fraction, frac 1, 2, under this. So you can type whatever you want. So you can add more spacing if they are too close together. So the system allows you to space your KaTeX. So in order for you to learn the syntax, all you just need to learn is a few things, like frac is a very important thing, plus minus or doing square roots. You just need to look at the documentation for further instruction on certain things. It's a very, very all-inclusive documentation. So for even things as complex as this, it can be rendered. So whenever you're found stuck, you can always go back there and copy it. So if you go through the documentation, you will see all the possible mass notation you would ever need. There are operators, there are symbols, there are expressions, whatever. And this does not just work for mathematics. If you want to do expressions in chemistry, showing the formulas, the arrows, the equations, this provides exhaustive list of all the syntax you need. Even tables can be rendered with KaTeX. So it's very simple. Just like as I've done the almighty formula, all you need to do is to memorize some basic, regularly used syntax, just like the frac we used. So let me show you another example. So let's say we want to work with matrices. So if we go, this is a typical example of table. There's a syntax they use for table. Let's say we want to work matrices. You can see, for example, these matrices, you have a begin, then you put the symbols A, B, and C separated by and then you end the matrix. So in order to write matrix, there must be a begin syntax and there must be an end. And in between the matrix, you now separate the items using this and double slash and this. That's how matrices work. So let's see how we can copy this and use it in our project. So in order for us to do that, let's just save this first so that we can see. So you can see our formula. It has come up the way it is. We can look at the preview as well to see how it comes up. So it really depends on the kind of expression. It virtually allows you to do all the complex expression you can think of. So you can as well edit. You can as well edit and make any changes you want to change. So you can add formulas or tables in not just question fields, but in any other fields you're using. Let's go to options. So if we go back to the formula and paste that stuff we copied, you can discover that it has failed to render. That's the reason, because the parser we implemented for this application sees a new line as a different row. And because of that, it is now trying to render it based on our own syntax. But in this case, these matrices have multiple lines. So the only thing we need to do to get it to work is to ensure that they are all in the same line. So it doesn't really matter. So we press backspace and make sure they come in the same line, because new line means something different. So you can see now that this matrix is shown clearly as it is in this application. So we can save. So you can see how the KaTeX allows us to express complex expression in a very simple manner. Okay, so it is very flexible in such a way that no matter the complexity of the maths, you can just simply look at the documentation and find the notation. There's a lot in the documentation, but trust me, you will not probably need up to 10 or to memorize more than 10 of the items for your use case. It's only when you need very, very complex expression that you may look at the documentation and memorize it. So you don't need to memorize everything. If you can know how 10 expressions work, you're good to go. Now, the next thing we are going to talk about is another content type called the HTML. Again, Venlearn has seen that there are so many expressions sometimes that cannot be rendered. For example, we have seen very complex expression in accounting as a subject, complex tables, and most times this table spans multiple rows and multiple columns. And we can't easily do it with our current implementation using our tables or using the default KaTeX notation. So sometimes some complexity can simply be moved to HTML. So for example, if you are familiar with HTML, you know that P stands for paragraph. So whatever you put in between P tag is going to be seen as paragraph. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to show you an example I have created before now so that we don't waste time. So if you go under paper, you can see that we have web. So if you click on web, there's a very complex table we created using the HTML notation. If I right click on this and click on edit, you can see how the table looks. So this table is a bit complex because sometimes it can span, for example, this finance spanned multiple rows. This one spanned multiple columns. So this is the table that would have been otherwise difficult to do. So now you may want to ask, do I have to memorize HTML to do that? No. There are some actual tools you can use to edit HTML content online for free, and then just copy the HTML syntax and paste it and use it in your application. I'll show you an example. If you click here, you go to the HTML table. So there's this website called tablesgenerator.com. So you can see this is the table generator page. With this, you can create however the table you want in your application, however complex it is. You can decide that this can span multiple rows. When you right click, you can just choose, merge cells, and then it merges it. So whatever you want to type, you can type it. Let's say you want to type 5 here. So you can create complex. So as you're creating the table, it's generating the HTML equivalent for you. So the website gives you a visual editor to create complex kind of tables with an option to copy the equivalent HTML. So if you have need for such kind of complexity, all you need to do is to go to tablesgenerator.com and edit your table, then copy the HTML. You can copy from here, and then you can get back to your editor. For example, we want to use the table in question B. So if we click on question B and we click on the HTML, we can now paste the table we have created. You can see that the table has rendered as we intended it to do. So you don't need to memorize how to create HTML tables. You just need to use the editor and create the table, and then you copy and paste. So you can see the table has rendered for us. So this is a way to create much complex tables. So that's it about the different content type. I can still go further and show you some of the types I've created before. For example, these formulas. If you go to the explanation, you can click on the formula expression, and you can see, you can right click and click on edit. And then you can see how we're able to create an expression like this using our KaTeX notation. If you watch, there's a text. So to express text is KaTeX. You just put it inside the text tag, and then you write y varies directly as s, so that is rendered as a text. If you want to do square root, we have talked about that, square root of n. If you want to do y, so whatever you want to do is possible. All you just need to do is to look at the documentation, and you'll be able to do that. So that's that about the different content types or file types you can use. We've talked about rendering formulas, we've talked about tables, we've talked about images, we've talked about HTML and audio files. So in subsequent tutorials, we'll dive deep into fill in the blank and other content type that can be very useful for us, and we'll see the various settings we can do with those content type. Thank you for your time.